Hi there, it's Mr. Clark. Welcome to lesson 1.1.2, simple meters and 2/4 time. So, we have two distinct topics to cover, simple meters and 2/4 time, and meter deals with how the beats in a piece of music are organized. I'm assuming, even though this is an introductory music theory course, that you've probably heard music at some point before in your life. However, I'm going to play a couple pieces so we can talk about them. This first one is from John Philip Sousa's The Stars and Stripes Forever. And as we're listening, you might want to, move around a little bit. Feels natural. Dance is something that is associated with music. And if you're going to move around, you have to think, when are you going to be doing that? You might feel the main beat here. You might feel it here. You might feel it even faster. Anyway, you feel it, as long as it matches up with what the music is doing, that's fine. You may have noticed that we felt it at different levels, and we're going to choose two of those levels and call one of them macro beat, or big beat, and one of them micro beat, or small beat. Micro, like microscope, seeing tiny things. I suppose a macroscope would be like a telescope or something. Anyway, so if we choose the macro beat and we keep that in our legs, or if we choose the higher levels, either way you cut it, there are two microbeats in each macrobeat. And that's what we mean when we refer to simple meter. You have two hand pats for every leg tap. Here's an example of a piece of music that does not go into two. This is the Blue Danube Waltz by Johann Strauss Jr. So here's a good big beat. And here's a small beat. So if we put those together, here's a big beat. And those divide into three, which is called a compound meter. We're not worrying about that for right now. We're just worrying about simple meters. So simple meters are when each macrobeat divides into two microbeats. So in 2/4 time, we know we have two quarter notes in each measure, so we can put these things, which are quarter notes, and we can put two of them in a measure. Great! And then we can take the microbeats, which we notate here. There are two of them for each quarter note, so we can put four of them in a measure. And the technical term for that is eighth notes. So if we want to draw these things with a quarter note, you have to have a filled in note head, and then it gets a stem. Great. And the only difference here with these eighth notes is that there's this beam up top. If you have a single eighth note, it would have a flag off of the stem. Mine usually aren't so fancy when I'm drawing them. It's just kind of like that. But we're not going to worry about single eighth notes for a while. You're always going to see them in pairs. So then, when we talk about notating rhythms, if we want to know how to say them, we usually use some sort of rhythm syllables. We'll be using what is called a modified Takadimi system for this class, and every big beat, every macro beat gets a number. So if we just had quarter notes, we would say 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And if we had just microbeats, just eighth notes, we would say 1D, 2D, 1D, 2D, 1D, 2D, 1D, 2D. And you can combine them like down here, and it would sound like this. 1, 2, 1D, 2D, 1, 2D, 1D, 2. The last thing to talk about is one more kind of note called a half note. It looks like a quarter note, but instead of having a filled in note head, It just has a hollow note head and a stem. A half note is twice the value of a quarter note. 2 quarter notes fit inside a half note, which makes sense because if you take like literal fractions, a quarter plus a quarter, that's going to equal half. That makes sense. So 4 eighth notes, 2 quarter notes, half note, all of those things will fill a bar of 2/4 time. See you next time.